So we see the 9 levels here. Okay? The evolution of consciousness is 9 steps. And each step, so this is the very first step in the 9, is broken into 13 sections. 7 days and 6 nights. Sound familiar? Again, kind of like the Bible. So the 13 sections, and we look at this like a wave, okay? And I kind of liken it all to school. During the day, think about when you went to school. During the day, you go and what do? You get enlightened. You learn. You get all this information. And then in the night, you go home and you have to apply that information. So when do you make the most mistakes? When is it the most difficult? It's when you're doing your homework, right? It's not when you're sitting in school, it's when you're applying it. And, you know, a really great example of it is when you learn how to drive. You know, somebody tells you, here's the steering wheel, here's the gas, here's the brake. It's really easy when somebody tells you what to do. And then you get behind the steering wheel and, you know, you're jerking, and it seemed easy until you try to apply it. We go through every one of these steps, so we're still talking about this first step. We go through 13 cycles. Okay? This step started 16.4 billion years ago, and it is believed that this started with the Big Bang. Or, as scientists now are finding out, it wasn't really a Big Bang, it was a big bounce, meaning cycles. So this first step is the full 16.4 billion years long. This cycle does not end until the whole calendar ends. Okay? So we're going to keep going up the calendar. You can see slowly each step gets gradually smaller. It's actually 20% smaller than the last step. And look at this national cycle. 3,000 years ago, long writing. Again, it goes back to, remember the grand ages that we were cycling through? The planetary cycle started 1755 AD, power and industry. Now we're going from 394 years per section down to just 20 years per section. Okay? Let's look at this galactic cycle. That started on January 4th, 1999, and each one of these steps, we were going through a new conscious evolution. Okay, we were learning something. And in 1999 is when we entered the ethics phase. And how many of you remember what happened around 1999? Huh? Enron. They were out of ethics. And they were one of the first to collapse. And it takes a while for us to learn, but on each one of these steps, this is a cycle that we're going through. Okay, so first day and night, first day and night, and each one of these is 360 days long. So starting way back in 1999, we had 360 days of each of these cycles to learn and apply, and learn and apply.
Can I just ask a question?
Absolutely.
All of these are flowing together, is that
That's
right?
right.
So it's cellular cycle is still continuing? As
All
the
of them.
Okay.
They're all continuing. And every time a new step is added, it's added on top. So now we're in the co-creation cycle. Remember when we heard about this earlier, the Hopi were saying in this age, what were we supposed to do? We're supposed to learn co-creation. Now we have the 16.4 billion year Mayan calendar telling us the exact same thing. Do you think maybe we should pay attention? This started March 9th of this year. Now, I don't know how many of you realize on March 9th, there was the first Japan quake. Okay, and that was a 7.2 earthquake. And again, that happened to be the day of offering. That was March 11th was the day of offering. March 11th was the 9.0 quake. Okay. Now, to exactly what you're saying, John, on that very first day, we got our very first rumblings of something happening in Japan. And one of the undercurrents that's happened since March 11 is we're really starting to question our source of power and our source of fuel. Because what happened? You know, the whole Fukushima plant went down. And we're slowly, the information is still slowly seeping out as to the truth of how much radiation has leaked and is leaking. And it's taking us through this, slowly learning more and more of what's developing through this. Okay?
I think the Japanese showed a good form of co-creation, though. The people who are in that tragedy, when you watch them all co-create. They all work together to some kind of symmetry to be able to survive. So they began to work together as a unit.
I could not agree with you more. That was one of the things that I pointed out and was looking at from the very beginning, was that, you know, the Japanese, through all this horror that they were going through, they would only take the water that they needed for themselves. They would go, I don't know how many of you have heard these stories about this, but they would go around and check on their neighbors to make sure that their neighbors were okay. Even if they weren't home, they would leave something out for them. They weren't going to the stores and hoarding and saying, well, you know, it's here, so I'll take the water. They are all helping one another. And like you say, they are.
Even today in the news, they were talking about purses are starting to wash up and safes. And the people are returning it to the people who own it. Like, they're not taking it. You know, they're not taking what's not theirs. They're returning it to whoever belongs. And that's another point to me of, you know, respect and having ethics and co-creating.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm getting chills just as you're talking about it. You know, it'd be nice if more of us could do that. And now, many people are feeling like time is speeding up, but time isn't speeding up. What we're trying to do in the amount of time that we have is getting more dense, right? What we're learning in each of these 13 sections, what we used to have 360 days to learn, go through these consciousness lessons, we're now down to 18 days. And welcome to the 5th night. It had started today. Okay, now, for any of you that don't know me very well, I'm always on the positive path. I can see the positive in anything, okay? So remember that as I start talking, okay? So we're in the 5th night right now, okay? This is the 9th wave, and I wanted to show you this just so that you can kind of get the feel of the flow, okay? We're in the days, and we have the nights, and we have the days, and we have the nights. And this is all we have left in a 16.4 billion year calendar, okay? So the days are the light periods, it's when we're learning, and the nights are usually a little bit more of a struggle because it's when we're applying what we've learned, okay? Welcome to the destruction and challenging phase, okay? August 18th through September 4th, and this is the midpoint of this section. So remember when I was talking about a wave? Typically, this is when you have the most energy, okay? This is when you start feeling it the most. So we're just starting to feel the energy of the 5th night today. A period of great physical hardships or major conflict. Dun dun dun!
That was a sign.
But it's also a time of manifestation. Okay, so while I want you to look at times in your life when you've gone through the most struggle, when you've had something kind of bad or difficult happen. 9 times out of 10, when you look back at that, something good came out of that. You know, it was a change, and it was difficult while it was happening. But if you focus on, you know, this too shall prepare me, that, you know, I'm working towards something else, you can look at this 5th night very differently. And I specifically want to kind of ingrain that in you, because anybody, now that this 5th night and this evolution of consciousness is in your consciousness, don't be surprised if you start hearing about it more and seeing it more. There are the people that are focusing on this fifth night and going, gloom, doom, oh my goodness. But if you look at it as this is a period of transition, this is a period of change where I can manifest what I want to be manifesting. And it's maybe the struggle that I need to go to have something wonderful on the other end. Can we try and remember and think of it that way? Times of the fifth night in the past was the Ice Age, the Dark Ages, and the economic collapse.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
So perhaps we need that bounce for us to recover. Perhaps we need something drastic to happen to get that upshoot again.
And like you said, for this whole evening, it's not about fear and avoidance, it's about awareness. Understand what's coming up and going on.
Yeah, you know what, if you know that there's a boulder in the road,
Don't
yeah,
I'm not
you
gonna
go
go
around it.
over it.
You know, and one of the things that I know, probably most of you have heard me talk about this before, you know, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, you know, and when the weatherman said there's a blizzard coming, we didn't run out into the streets in fear. We went, oh, I gotta be prepared for it,
Go get
okay,
some food,
you know,
yeah.
so I gotta get my food. We're probably gonna go without electricity. We're probably gonna go without water because the pipes are gonna
How
freeze
romantic,
again.
light the candles.
Yeah, it wasn't romantic when you're 8 years old, you know. And you can only sled just so long because it's
Right.
cold in the house and
Yeah.
it's cold outside. But the point is, you know, well, there wasn't any school, so that was great.
Yeah.
But, you know, we prepared for it. And, you know, especially here in Arizona, we forget to prepare. You know, if you talk to people in Florida in the hurricane zones, or I lived in California, we were prepared for earthquakes, or Buffalo, we were always prepared for blizzards, you know. We don't really do very much to prepare here. You know, we really don't. So if we can, at a very minimum, be prepared with awareness, by God, you know, we're ahead of the game.
Yes.
Big time.
You know what just popped into my head that's a great analogy of that is the resistance. Has everybody here seen Contact? The movie with Jodie Foster?
Yeah.
Remember when they built that thing for her?
Oh,
And
yeah.
they went against the one thing that they told her to do, right? All the schematics came in and said, just get inside the ball, you'll be safe. No, the scientists knew better, so they made that seat and strapped her in. So she starts going, and what happens? Her body's resisting it instead of going with the flow, and it wasn't until she saw her necklace floating, unstrapped, and all of a sudden she went with the flow, and it was great. And you know what? And we're gonna hear going with the flow again later, so I'm glad that you brought that up.